Hello, and thank you for joining me today. Today, I would like to talk with you about being rejected for following the Lord. It sounds crazy at first, even to even say the words, but why would anyone reject somebody who's following the Lord? That's a good question, but we live in a world where people are not always going to accept you for speaking of your faith and of your beliefs and things of that the Lord has done for you. And but still people like they're going to reject you for it. And it's like, why would someone do this? The Lord is the greatest thing that could ever happen to someone. He's the greatest person that could come into someone's life. Yet people still do not want him. I remember one time a brother in the Lord had told me, he says, Josh, everyone is not always going to accept you. They're not always going to like you. And when he told me this, I accepted it, but I didn't fully understand it. And later that day, I was struggling with what he had said. I was the type before that I didn't want anyone to dislike me. I wanted everyone to accept me, and to be honest, I was a people pleaser. I'd rather please someone than please God. And I remember very clearly I was heading down the road in Thomasville, Georgia, to be exact, riding beside the Walmart. And I was just doing my windshield talk with the Lord as I like to do. And I remember the Lord spoke these words to me. He says, Josh, I came to save all, but was rejected by most. And when he gave me those words, I was completely speechless. It just hit me. He said, I came to save all and was rejected by most. And here, the Lord of Lords and King of Kings is telling me that. So who am I to think that everyone's going to accept me? These words the Lord gave me some 8 years ago, and yet they are still so true today. But when the Lord gave me this word, he reminded me of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I want you to turn with me, if you would, to Daniel chapter 3. We're going to read from verses 16 to 25. We're picking up right after King Nebuchadnezzar had ordered everyone to bow down and worship a golden image, but some still stood for the Lord. Verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thy hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It says, and therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. And he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats and their hosen and their hats and their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's commandment was urgent and the furnace exceeding hot, the flame of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished, and he rose up in haste, and spake and said unto his counselors, Did we not cast three men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, True, O king. He answered and said, Lo, I see four men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. Amazing, amazing story. These old boys were rejected for following God, and they could have went along with the crowd and bowed down and worshiped and went against everything that they believed in, that they knew to be true. Yeah, they could have bowed and worshiped these false gods, yet they didn't. They stood for the Lord, even if it meant they were to die for him. They said, Our God is able. He is able to deliver them. But even if he don't deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, we will not bow to your gods. Like where they were thrown in bound, but the Lord was still with them. Nebuchadnezzar said, Didn't we throw three in? And yet I see four. Imagine the confusion that must have been across his face when he just saw three people being thrown into this furnace. Now he's like, what in the world? What's going on here? Didn't we throw three in? And now I see a fourth amongst them? And the fourth is like the Son of God. But notice that they were thrown in bound, but now they were loose. They were walking in this fiery furnace with the Lord. Truly an amazing story to go from being rejected for their faith and standing for the Lord. And it says later in that chapter that Nebuchadnezzar even changed his beliefs because the Lord stood with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Because they stood for the Lord, and the Lord stood with them. He even changed his beliefs. But being rejected for following the Lord in the moment can be painful. It can be hard to go through. Because even though you are walking in that perfect will of God, it's not always going to be easy. And everyone is not always going to accept you. Not always going to like you for it. But standing for the Lord is probably one of the best things a believer could ever do. Recently, I went through something myself. The Lord told me to apply to this place here. And he didn't say I would get this job, but he told me to apply there. He led me there. And so I applied, and I went to my first interview, and it went great. I mean, it's like it's hitting on all cylinders. It's kind of like a little softball type questions, you might say. But then I went to the second interview. And this time it's me and 3 other managers, And they started asking me, Josh, why are you here? Why are you in Arizona? And why are you applying to our company? And all I could say is exactly what the Lord had already laid on me to say. Since the Lord had sent me here, He sent me and my wife to Arizona. He even sent me here to apply for this job. And that I was following His will for my life. And I just put the Lord out there. They called me the next day. And yeah, I was kind of thinking I was going to get the job, even though the Lord didn't tell me I was going to get it. But I guess that's Josh's will trying to overshadow the Lord's will. And so they called me up the next day, though, and said, thank you for coming in, but you do not fit in our culture. And I remember asking them, they're like, well, man, what's wrong? What is wrong? Well, just after our interview, we just talked amongst ourselves, and you're just not a good fit for our culture. And I'm like, well, gosh, I'm thinking to myself, well, I only talked about the Lord. What could be wrong? And at first I was upset. Needing a job, very desperately needing a job. But the Lord is still providing right on. He's so good, y'all. He is so good. But I wondered, why, Lord? Why would you send me to this place that would reject me? Why do you want me to go through this? And then He reminded me of everyone's not going to always accept you. Right after that phone call, I'd say it was probably a few minutes, my wife and I were at the laundromat doing clothes. And we went back and sat in the truck, and Lord reminded me of this verse in Luke chapter 9, verse 5. He says, and whosoever will not receive you, when you go out of that city, shake off the very dust from your feet for a testimony against them. See, the Lord is telling us that some will reject us for standing for Him. But for us to shake the very dust off our feet and move on. Because they have not only rejected you, they've rejected Him. But know this, something I'm learning in this even as we speak, but you've done exactly what He's asked you to do. It's their loss and it's not yours. You did follow the Lord to the T, but they just didn't accept you for it. And that's okay. Following the Lord can be very hard sometimes. And where He guides you, it will not always be sunshine and rainbows. But even if He leads you into some dark places, know that He is with you even then. Even in those dark times, He is with you. Even in as we just read in Daniel, even in the fiery furnace, He is with you. Even when you think you are the only one standing, He is with you. Even in that office doing that interview, y'all should have seen their faces. They looked at me like I had grown 3 heads. But He was with me. Let us hold on to our faith, though. Even when we are being rejected, hold on to our faith. Even though we could bow and go with the ways of the world, go along with the crowd, but we choose to stand for Christ. We choose to be the tree planted by the water. We choose to hold on to the anchor of our souls. No matter how people treat us, no matter how they talk to us, no matter if we get that job or if we don't, no matter if we get that promotion or we don't, if you gain the world but lose your soul, what have you gained? So be encouraged in following the Lord. Be strengthened in your rejections. Be bold in your faith. Count it joy. It's hard to do, but it's so true. Count it joy in your rejection for following the Lord. As greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world. And we look unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. I hope and pray that you find strength in this word, that when that opportunity comes your way, that you too will stand for the Lord. Could be just in passing by with a customer or anything. You never know when that opportunity is going to open up for you. But when it does, stand for the Lord. To somebody, if they ask you of your faith, that you can speak it with all boldness, with all truth, and with all love. Thank you for watching. And until next time, may God bless you.